Is time travel possible? It is mind-boggling to think about time travel. What if you could flip a switch and go back in time? It's right up there before you make a choice, flight or invisibility, the chance to travel in time, to revisit the past and alter the future. What if you could return to the same spot in the past and do something different? Would you undo a historical tragedy, relive your glory days and make a different choice? Or would leave it alone, securing knowledge that you can't change the past but are responsible for your future? Well, the lesson we are going to do today is based on time travel. There's a transition of the protagonist from the present day New York to past Galesburg. So welcome to my channel, Rendezvous with Reena. Walter Braden Finney was an American writer mainly known for his contributions for science fiction yonder. He is the author of the time travel novel Time and Again and the science fiction thriller Body Snatcher. He displayed his interest in time travel through the short story collection The Third Level, which includes stories about a commuter who discovered a train that runs between New York in the year 1894. The lesson is based on the theme of time travel and escapism. Time travel basically means travel to the past or future. So in this lesson, we see the protagonist wishes to escape into the world of 1894 in order to lead a peaceful life in Galesburg. For according to him, it was a place where people were leading a peaceful life in big houses. So we can say that Charlie, who is the protagonist, wants to escape to the world of fantasy. The story also dwells on the theme of escapism. Escapism means to avoid boring or unpleasant aspects of the daily life, typically through activities involving imagination or entertainment. So in this chapter, the protagonist Charlie, through his hobby of stamp collection, transports to the world of past. Past is a good place to visit, but certainly not a good place to stay. The Third Level by Jack Finney is an engrossing story set in 1950s. The story starts with numerous undertones of irony and takes us back in time when people had seen two of the bloodiest wars in the history of mankind. The story brings to light that the figment of someone's imagination can be used to shun away the reality, which in all fairness is harsh enough. So let us take a look at the story, which begins with a mention of the third level at the Grand Central Station, which is only 2 levels in real. The protagonist himself is also aware that even the president of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven and Hartford Railroad would be confident about the existence of only 2 levels. But according to him, he has been to the 3rd level. Considering the entire scenario, Charlie, the protagonist, speaks to his psychiatrist friend Sam. He explains that Charlie was experiencing waking dream wish fulfillment, or in other words, hallucination, which means false perception, an experience in which you see, feel, hear, smell something that does not exist. In this lesson, the protagonist feels that he has been to the 3rd level of the Grand Central, which in reality has only 2 levels. According to psychiatrist, Charlie was unhappy, and this fact was not liked by his wife, Lucia. Charlie lives in New York. The city is full of insecurities, fear, war, stress, and tension. People feel unsafe and troubled, so they want to escape to some peaceful world. This was the case with Charlie also. He agreed to what his psychiatrist friend had to say, but still found it strange that he had been to the third level of the Grand Central Station. Upon explaining it further, it became clear that it was the burden of the all modern problems that were pushing Charlie to experience the false world which did not exist in real. He tends to escape the harsh realities of the present world, maybe to cope up with them, and so indulges in waking dream wish fulfillment. Charlie begins to believe in the possibility that he has been experiencing all this to escape the harsh realities of the modern world. His friend agreed to it as well. Even Charlie's stamp collection is a sort of a shelter he adopts in order to feel protected. So it can be said that the art of collecting stamps transports us into real past, and it is one of the most effective and common ways to keep the past alive. On the other hand, he starts thinking that his grandfather started his stamp collection in the days when they had not seen the consequences of the war. There was peace, harmony, and security. Therefore, he thinks that his grandfather didn't need any refuge from reality, as during his time things were pretty nice and peaceful. The word refuge refers to the state of being saved or sheltered. So this means that Charlie's grandfather must not have been in any state of insecurity. During his time, the collection was amazing, with blocks of 4 of practically every US issue and first day covers. He further tells that even President Roosevelt collected stamps. Blocks of 4 means group of 4 unseparated stamps that are rarer than the individual stamps. When the new stamp is issued, stamp collectors buy that, affix them on the envelopes, mail it to themselves on the very first day of the sale, and in this way the new stamp gets the postmark and the date, and it is called first day cover. Charlie found this kind of cover in his stamp collection. Charlie starts explaining what exactly happened and begins with how he chose to take the subway to his apartment instead of the usual bus after a late night shift. He did it in order to save time. He describes himself as an ordinary man of 31, dressed in tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. It was so ordinary that he could see other similar men at the station. He explains how he was in a normal state of mind, not wanting to escape from anywhere. All he wanted to be with his wife Lucia at that hour. So Charlie doesn't understand why this should have happened to him. The word gabardine refers to smooth, desirable cotton cloth or a loosely fitted garment. I turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue, went down the steps to the first level where you take trains like the 20th century. Then I walked down another flight to the second level where the suburban trains leave from, ducked into an arched doorway heading for the subway, and got lost. That's easy to do. I've been in and out of the Grand Central hundreds of times. I'm always bumping into new doorways and stairs and corridors. Once I got into a tunnel about a mile long and came out in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time I came up in an office building on the 46th Street, 3 blocks away. So children, we see suburb refers to residential. Ducked means lower the head or the body quickly. Arced means curved, and bumping means knocking into or run into something. So Charlie comes to the part of the incident where he enters the Grand Central from the Vanderbilt Avenue. It was nothing unusual because he had been to the station hundreds of times. There were occasions when he would bump into new doorways and corridors and would get lost. So he tells that once he entered the wrong lobby and reached Roosevelt Hotel. Another time he reached the office building at the 46th Street, which was about 3 blocks away. Sometimes I think Grand Central is growing like a tree, pushing out new corridors and staircases like roots. There's probably a long tunnel that nobody knows about, feeling its way under the city right now on its way to Times Square and maybe another to Central Park. And maybe because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit, a way of escape. Maybe that's how the tunnel I got into. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. So we see that Charlie wondered that Grand Central was expanding at a very fast pace, just like the tree with its roots. The new corridors with its tunnels were trying to reach Times Square and Central Park. He feels so because Grand Central was the place of exit for innumerable people. And he had also managed to escape reality because of same reason, although he never shared the truth with his psychiatrist friend Sam. The unusual corridor he had entered into began angling left and slanting downward, which he felt odd, but nevertheless he kept on walking. There was no one except him, and the voice of his feet echoed. He finally heard the sound of people talking from a distance. Then he took a left and walked down the stairs again, only to reach the 3rd level of the Grand Central. Charlie thought that he had somehow made his way to the 2nd level, but he noticed that the rooms were smaller with ticket windows and train gates. He also observed brass batons lying on the floor. Suddenly, a glimpse of the light caught his attention, and he saw a man pulling gold chain from his vest pocket. He was dressed in old-fashioned style. He had handlebar mustache, which means thick mustache with curved ends. Basically, those mustaches refer to handlebars of the bicycle. And he also noticed that everyone was dressed like the 19th century. He saw a woman who was wearing the dress with a leg of mutton sleeves, which means dress with puff sleeves, generally wider on the upper arm and narrow towards the wrist. It was basically the time before the deadly wars. So many beards and fancy mustaches all around, something that Charlie had never seen before. He even saw a small Courier and Eve locomotive, which made him sure which time he was in. To check his suspicion, he went to the newspaper boy who was selling the World, a newspaper which was discontinued years ago. There were some headlines about the president of that time, that is President Cleveland. The date on the front page was also June 11th, 1894. So understanding that he had somehow gone back in time, Charlie tries to buy tickets to Galesburg, Illinois for himself and his wife. So we see that Galesburg was a fanciful world virtually where Charlie always wanted to escape. A wonderful town with big old frame houses, huge lawns and tremendous trees. He paid in the currency of the present world, which was totally different from 1890s world. On seeing the big note, Charlie got stunned and he thought that Charlie was trying to cheat him. He threatened Charlie to get him arrested. Charlie left and fled for old-style currency notes. The next day, Charlie withdrew all his saving to buy old currency notes. But unfortunately, he could not find the way to the 3rd level corridor again despite his hard efforts. His wife Lucia was pretty worried when she got to know about it and told Charlie not to look for third level anymore. So Charlie took to stamp collection. One day, while looking through his collection, Charlie noticed a first day cover which he believed not to have seen before. This cover was addressed to his grandfather and mailed to him at his house in Galesburg. It was on July 18, 1894, and definitely it must have gone into grandfather's collection, and it must be lying over there since long, since it was the first day cover, so it wasn't opened. We also see that Sam, the psychiatrist, had disappeared out of the blue, and Charlie had suspected that he must have gone to Galesburg. We see Charlie in the time space of 1894. On opening up the envelope, he found that it had a letter from Sam. He had reached Galesburg. He was living there happily. He had found the place very charming, peaceful and serene, and had written to Charlie to keep looking for third level and come to Galesburg. In other words, the letter appealed to Charlie's imagination, like his escape to the third level. The psychiatrist, who was his friend, too had warned him that his stamp collection was a mode of escaping into the past. The text at the end of the lesson, wherein Charlie says that Sam certainly cannot go back to his old business in Galesburg of 1894. This means for Sam and Charlie, Galesburg was a place where people had leisurely lifestyle. There were no competition amongst themselves. They liked sitting in the lawns, enjoying with each other. Everything was well placed and well settled, with complete mental peace. They had no tension, stress, or embedded fears in their minds, and thus no mental ailments. And Sam, being a psychiatrist, would not have found any patient there. That is why it was said he certainly cannot go back to his old business in Galesburg of 1894. So children, we can say that both Sam and Charlie are the victims of the whim that the third level exists, because it gives them a way to run away from the troubles caused due to their burdened life. The concept of peaceful life of Galesburg attracted them to be there. So they imagined themselves in Galesburg living with comfort and peace, though in reality they know that nothing existed like the third level, but their longing for mental peace compels them to believe it. All in all, the third level brings us to the conclusion that people find it hard to make peace with unpleasant things they come across in life. The story further makes us realize that past and future are real illusions. The protagonist is an ordinary man with a family. Peace and serenity happens to be two things he wants rather desperately. So his decision to stay back in the year 1894 reiterates his desire to live a peaceful and a joyous life with his wife. The insecurities that came with war, terror and disease had caused the common man like Charlie to wish for a temporary relief from the harsh realities of life. So in the end, we can say that real happiness is not in chasing temporary illusions of this world, but rather in finding true peace in itself. With this, we come to the end of the chapter. I hope you all understood the chapter well. Thank you.